Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Fireside Friday. My name is Jack Miller. I'm the president of T360, and we are here again. As a reminder, we started this series as part of our COVID support during back during March, which seems like a long time ago now. And we are ending the year with a series of interviews. This month, we are doing teams. So we're talking to leaders of teams this month. If this is your first time to come, welcome. If you're not aware, if you go to t360.com/Friday, there's an archive of all of our past webinars, and we actually get quite a few people replay there. So if you missed any of these, t360.com/Friday, head over there and you can watch any of the replays. This will be published in probably about another 3 or 4 days after we have a chance to edit it. So I'd like to welcome/introduce Kelly White, our Chief Operating Officer. So welcome, Kelly. Those of you that have been following along, Kelly we brought in to run our talent and recruiting for T360 about 1.5 years ago. And then just about 2 months ago, we promoted her to Chief Operating Officer. So we are very, very lucky to have Kelly's leadership in operations. And it's a real privilege to get to work with her again. This is our third organization that I've done some management work and gotten to work together. So it's a real pleasure. And I want to welcome our guest today, Lauren Bowen, who's a team leader with a team at Robert Slack LLC, which is a brokerage in Florida. And Lauren, we are really excited to talk to you and learn a little bit about you. You're one of most of our guests that come on this program. We know because they've come to the T3 Summit, we've done lots of stuff with, but you're brand new to us, and that's kind of an exciting proposition. We get to talk to somebody we've never ever talked to before, and so we're excited. So welcome. We're glad to have you here, and lots of questions for you. And
sure.
We'll just jump right in. So I'll start with my first. How are you doing? How's this crazy year been? How's your family? How's your company? Have you guys managed to avoid the COVID, or if you got anybody that's gotten sick, or what's going on for you personally? Tell us a little bit about that. And again, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you.
Thank you for having me on. Personally, luckily, we have been very blessed to not have had COVID yet. We are trying to keep our bubble of who we are around very small, not only for our own health, but for our family members as well. So we're trying to keep it as small as we can, remain as healthy as we can, but also kind of create some type of normalcy. I do have 2 children, so keeping our bubble small has kind of become the norm, but luckily we are very, very lucky that we have not had to endure it. We have had a couple agents who have had it, knock on wood. Luckily, they have all recovered just fine, but trying to do everything we can to man this craziness.
Well, I'm glad to hear it's if it's had an impact, it sounds like it's been manageable. We have had in our company, we had one of our team members, significant others got it, but no, that's as close as it's come to us at this point. But we have had several clients, so it's been definitely a time to be careful. Wear your masks, folks. Yeah, wear your mask, wash your hands, social distance, all the things. So.
Well, Lauren, we're so glad to meet you, and thank you for being here. So tell us a little bit about your experience, and we'd love to know how you got into the industry and sort of your journey.
So I have been in the industry for about 8 years now. My background is actually in the medical field, the operating room to be more specific.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so very different from the field I went to school and trained for. But I loved it, but unfortunately I was doing 12-hour shifts. I had call 5 nights a week. I had a newborn child at home, and my parents were essentially raising him.
Wow.
So about that time, I knew this fantastic gentleman by the name of Robert Slack. I happen to have known him my whole life. He is actually my father. So he started getting back into the real estate industry, and about 2 years after that, opened his own brokerage. Took a little bit of convincing, but once I made that leap, I have never once regretted it and never looked back.
That's fantastic. To move over, we had a few people that have moved over from other industries. So you're one of them. We had an earlier call. We had a Marine he was came out of military and
That's right. I did.
yeah. So it's been when we get people from other industries, that's always it's interesting. You have a different background. A lot of people we talk to came from industry originally. So well, tell us a little bit about your team. I mean, our audience doesn't know you, and we're just getting to know you. So how big is the team? Kind of how many transactions do you guys do? Give us a sense of what does your team look like, and how is it composed? How do you organize it? What is it?
So my team is one of the original within Robert Slack because we did start here in Ocala, which is just north of Orlando, but south of Gainesville. Robert himself did used to oversee this team. And as the company grew, he realized we needed to get a kind of a team leader in place. I was lucky enough to fill that position. I currently have 51 agents on my team. Some of them are husband and wife teams, so it brings about 45 of them into actual production. And I have to say, these are some of the hardest working individuals I have ever had the privilege of working with. These 45 agents have over 200 under contract right now. They have closed over 800 this year, just shy of 165 million.
Holy cow.
Wow, that is super impressive.
That's amazing.
Super impressive.
I mean, numbers are astronomical, but I mean, we do get internet leads, so they convert really well as well. We know internet leads convert close to 1%. They are closer to 5%. My top agents are closer to 10%. So they are machines.
And so tell us a little bit what is it that makes your conversion rate so much higher from the comparison between the 1% versus the 5%? What are you doing different there that you can share with us?
We really do try and instill in them that they have to do the follow-up. We know that it's going to take an average of 12 times of calling, reaching out to them before they finally pick up the phone. One of the game changers that probably really helped their conversion rate was bringing YLOPO into play and kind of retargeting some of these older leads that we did have in the system. And that just sent our conversion through the roof.
Because those are people that have been exposed to the brand before and they've come through your process. So it's like,
correct.
Oh, I'm being reminded to come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, that's well, and I find there's a big, like, the way we train, I'm just curious to hear how you do, but when we talk to people that are putting together teams for the first time, it's like, well, when you just get started, you're going to have 1% conversion because your agents aren't trained. They don't have a system in place, all that kind of stuff. And then there's like things you put in place to get it from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, training being a big part of that. But what are some of your like key elements of success where you help those agents become better at converting leads? What do you do with them?
So we do have a full training before they come onto my team, they do go through a full training process. So they do become familiarized with all of the products that we do use. We use Follow Up Boss, we use App Files, we use YLOPO. We really need them comfortable with this before they even start getting these leads. We all know these leads are not cheap, they are expensive. So we do this before they even come into play. That way, when they get to the team, they are ready to hit the ground running. It is very unlikely that we will have someone on with us 60 days without a pending. I have a couple of newer agents and they are all 2, 3 pending. We had a webinar yesterday with the company and we have agents less than 60 days in with 6 and 7 pending. So doing this beforehand, before they start getting these leads, is absolutely vital.
And so then how do you train them to be able to do that? I'm curious because that is no small feat.
I mean, we really do have some great training in place. So when we go over everything, the understanding of it is key. They have to understand App Files. They have to understand YLOPO, Follow Up Boss, giving them a few test leads and letting them work the process. So give them someone who's been in the database 5 years. Let's see how you make the phone call. Let's see how you use the auto dialer. Let's see how you set them up on drips. Let's see how the text messaging works sent out a YLOPO. Let's see how Ryo works. That way, when they work through the process, they can understand it a little bit better. So when these leads do come into them, it's not like, what do I do with this lead? I don't know what to do. They've already worked some of these. So that way they know exactly. And it's just built into them.
Yeah, they're already familiar with all the tools. Absolutely. And what they do, and it's not like they're figuring it out. And so we have lots of questions for you. So I'm curious because I have my own number. I have a number when Kelly and I ran a company together. We gave leads to agents, and we provided a lot of support and structure. But I'm curious, how many leads do you give an agent, and how did you arrive at that number? Like, is there a right number for your organization that seems to work well?
We do find that between 20 and 30 leads a month is kind of the key number. We used to be a little bit higher at 30 to 40, some were even 50. And then again, once we brought Ylopo into play and we were able to retarget some of these older leads, we realized we had to scale the number that we were giving them back a few. In the future, maybe even next year, our key point might be 20 because it's been doing such a good job. But once we start getting them over 30, 40 leads, we do see the conversions start dropping quite drastically. So as a company wide, we have seen between 20 and 30 really is the key spot where we need to keep them.
That's great.
And so I'm curious how you leverage yourself or leverage them, more importantly, which is when they're new and they're starting, are you leveraging them through systems and technology? Do you leverage them by mentorship? Or because you can have the systems and train them on the systems, but if they're new, like how are you working with them in order to be able to handle that number of leads? And tell us more about that.
So we do kind of a little bit of both, the mentorship and the system. So I do meet with them once a week. With COVID, we are having to do quite a bit of it over Zoom. And I am able to pull up all of their leads on the follow-up boss end. And I'm like, let's go through each of them. And, we pull up each lead. All right, that's great. Or this is what we could do better. Oh, you haven't called this person at all? Why not? Oh, you forgot to log it. Let's make sure to do that. So meeting them with them every week until they get to that comfort level. I mean, with this being the original team, some of them are only once a month. Some of them are, a phone call can cover everything they need to go over. They're kind of self-proficient, but the newer ones, absolutely once a week is where we need to be, kind of walking it through with them, making sure they have everything where it needs to be, seeing it on our end, talking through it. That's one of the things we've seen was the most important to their success.
And how do you do, so, I know how we approach this problem, but I found a lot of what agents struggle with is they don't know what to say. They don't know how to build a relationship with a stranger that they just met on the internet. And so we had a variety of things we did. How do you, you can train to it, but how do you individually coach them? Do you have them record calls? Like, how do you have them improve their sales dialogues with these folks?
So everyone hates making that initial phone call. We're all kind of scared of that fear of rejection when you make it. Are they going to answer?
Yeah.
What am I going to say? Are they not going to answer? Oh, thank goodness they didn't answer. We all worry about that. So
Right.
We do tend to meet, like a few of my experienced agents will meet with some of the newer ones, and they can kind of provide their feedback. But then, a little bit of role playing in there as well. Like, let's say I am the age, or let's say I'm the shopper. Let's say I'm the buyer. What questions am I going to ask? What questions should you always be prepared for? You always need to know how old the roof is. You always need to know how old the AC is. You always need to know some of these basic things about the house. How long has it been on the market? Some of these things are just basics, and doing that through a role play kind of scenario has really seemed to help them, but also just putting themselves out there we have an auto dial feature on Follow Up Boss. Just make those phone calls, just do it, because there's nothing that's going to be better than you just actually doing it. Sometimes we do get an agent we don't know where the disconnect is. Like, where are we losing it? We're getting you to showings, but we're not getting you to contract. What's happening at that showing that we don't know what's going on? So I secret shopper them. I have somebody that's an experienced agent that they might not know. I have another team leader. They're the lead. Hey, they called into the office. They would like to see it at 6:00. And then we usually find out what's the problem. They just opened the door and stood there the rest of the time. That's not going to work. So that's one of the things, when we have that disconnect, that's one of the things I do like to put into play.
Yeah, that's a slick technique to have a secret shop your team members, and then you get very rich feedback
Exactly.
from your experienced agent who can say, here's the 15 things they did wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because the thing is, they'll keep doing it unless they get the feedback.
Absolutely. If you don't know what you're doing wrong, you don't know how to fix it. So we never talk about it in a negative way. It's always, this is what we need to do. And then sometimes either I or the experienced agent will go with them to the next few showings to make sure they can put it into play.
That's great. So of course now I'm curious, like backing it up a little bit is, how do you decide who the right people are and how do you hire or recruit them? I'm all about like the talent conversation. So how do you choose the right people that work in that environment?
That is always going to be the toughest thing. I don't bring people on just to be bodies on the team. They have to be the right person.
Yeah.
That is probably the toughest obstacle as part of like as far as hiring for a team.
Yeah.
Personality makes a huge part of it. I have an agent on my team that's been an agent with me for almost 2 years now, and she was one of my clients when I was selling her a home, but she just had this most awesome personality. I'm like, you need to become an agent, because she was just one of those people that everybody loved,
Mhm.
and she could relate to them, and she was sincere, and she is one of my top agents now. But they also have to be very tech mindful. We tend to say we are a technology company that sells real estate, but
Mhm.
we use
I like that.
more platforms than a traditional brokerage would. So we have to make sure, if you have a flip phone, you're probably not right for us. So we have to make sure that they can handle the technology.
Hang up your BlackBerry.
I know, exactly.
I love the BlackBerry. Yeah.
I did too. I held on to mine a little too long, candidly. But no, that's yeah. Getting the right talent is I think the toughest. That's one of the reasons why Kelly's been so great with our team, is that she has such good expertise there, and I think that finding that person is really hard. How do you I don't know how to say this in a nice way, but what do you do with somebody who's not working out? Like they've come on, you did your screening, they went through the training, they've been in, like what kind of boundaries do you draw around them, and how do you know when it's like this is probably not going to work, and or do you do any corrective action with them? Because I think a lot of people, we're salespeople, we love people, we want to bring them into our world and we want to help them become successful, but at some point you go, you know what, this is not working, and I'm just curious to hear your perspective on that conversation.
Because we are such a high producing team up here,
Mm.
they do have to kind of hold themselves to a higher standard. I do put minimum conversion rates into play. If
Yeah.
they are in a group and they have no pending and the person next to them has 14 pending, what are we doing wrong?
Yeah.
We're gonna tone in on those one-on-ones. Okay, now we're at 4 one-on-ones, we're a month in, and we're not getting any better. Your follow-up looks good. So are you doing it? Are you just putting notes in? Let's start diving a little bit deeper. Unfortunately, you always get those people who we do have people who come into the real estate industry and thinks it's easy. They think it's going to be an easy paycheck. You show the house, you get your check. And unfortunately, those are the ones that will never work out. So once, for us, we can pretty much see in the first 60 days if they're going to make it or not. And of course, leads are expensive, as we touched on before. So I can't afford to keep them on, not only for me, but for the company as well. So it's just, okay, thank you. We've done everything we could, but this might not be the right fit for you. A lead-based company might not be where you need to be. You might be better farming your own business. We do have a couple divisions within our company. So not only do we have the leads division, we also have a traditional and a 100% division. So sometimes it's just transitioning them down to one of those.
Right. Because if it's not a right fit, then it's not good for them either, to your point.
Absolutely.
And you can't really survive on the income that you would be producing if you're actually not fulfilling the standards that you need in order to like make a living, right? So
Absolutely.
So it works out for everybody to like be slow to hire and quick to let go or terminate or whatever. And so I take it you have the systems and the reporting that you need to be able to know that. So tell us a little bit more about like your systems reporting, maybe goal setting and planning, like how do you, and I'd also be curious, I know it's too many questions at one time, but I'm also curious the transition between, pre-COVID and after COVID, because you clearly hired people that were already good with technology. And yet sometimes the team environment is so supportive, even if you're individually performing. And so maybe tell us about how it shifted after COVID.
So as a reporting scale, we do use a few different mechanisms. I tend to like spreadsheets a little bit more than the average person. They make me happy, probably a little bit too much. So I do record. I record everything. I know how many leads they get. I know what areas they're working. I know how many homes, how many transactions, what's their conversion ratio. I use reporting under Follow Up Boss to see how many leads they got that week, past 2 weeks, past month. How many phone calls did they make? How many phone calls lasted over 2 minutes? Like really, spreadsheets just make me happy. So I look at them way too much.
That's awesome.
So we do also have a program called Clipfolio that we do monitor kind of the bigger spread of things. So I can see them in comparison to everyone else on the team, see the trends, and we do utilize that a lot. But I don't know why everyone teases me for spreadsheets, but they're my happy place. So I can just kind of monitor where everyone needs to be. Pre-COVID, we did a lot of stuff as a team. We are not, I mean, we're a high producing team, but we're also a highly engaged team. We did basketball games, baseball games, our industry before COVID and our industry after COVID. Being comfortable doing a video walkthrough, probably 25% of my team was, 100% of them are now. That is something we had to drastically change. Aster Room, 3D tours on your MLS. That was something that wasn't really seen before COVID. That's something that's an absolute necessity post-COVID. Video text messaging, just kind of like we have action plans in place to follow up with our leads. Even the tone, even the message going out in those, it does have to change. We have to be a little more sensitive to things. Back in March when we couldn't see each other as much, you do kind of miss the social engagement part of everything. So I kept spirits up. I sent 2-pound cookies out to each of my team members. They're called Fat and Weird Cookies, and they just got a kick out of it. But it's really, you have to keep their morale up as well, because as soon as they start getting down, you can see it in their production as well. If they start withdrawing a little bit, their production absolutely tanks. So there's a few things we had to do, but I think everyone's comfortable with them now. And I think it's something that we're going to have to sustain.
Yeah, there's some parts of the changes we've done for COVID that have been, I think, good changes in the sense of higher value to the client, the ability to personalize, when you can't get together with people. And that's a useful skill all the time, because a lot of our work now, even if COVID was not an issue, we still do a lot of work online. We still do a lot of work remote. So I think I think you're absolutely right about that. Can we talk about the money for a minute? Because I think that's a conversation. I know. So for context, we have a lot of brokers that come on with us. A lot of industry leaders listen to this Fireside Friday chat. And I think if for some of them, I'm not going to say all of them, but for some of them, they look at this model and they go, well, yeah, there's probably a referral fee, or there's probably a different split, things like that. But it's very different to have it come from an operator and say, hey, this is how we make the money work, because it's for your model. It's so important that you make a return, because you're spending, everybody's spending something up front for agents, but with leads, you're really spending a lot. You could be spending a couple $1,000s per agent per month easily to make this work. So talk to us a little bit about the money and how do you monetize back out from the transactions, and what are the, if you don't want to share specifics, that's fine, but what are the norms, do you think, for that?
So we do run a little bit differently than most teams or brokerages. People tend to call us the teamerage, because on most teams, the team leader tends to buy the leads and disperse them out to their agents. For us, the brokerage buys the leads and disperses them out to the agents. So we are so I don't have that responsibility, but I sure am responsible for making sure that the business gets a return on it. Because not only are we buying leads, we supply the agents with app files, Follow Up Boss, YLopo. We don't charge them a dime for this. We don't charge a monthly fee. We don't charge a joining fee. So our return is purely out of, if they sell a home. If they're not successful, I'm not successful. The company's not successful. If I have too many not successful, there I go. We are held accountable on how well our team does. So that is, of course, I make money off of the transactions my team sells, but more importantly, we are held accountable, but I have to hold my team accountable as well. We don't want anyone thinking, oh, leads are free, let me just throw them away, let me not convert, let me convert at 0.5, and it's okay because they're still selling something. So accountability is huge.
And what's the expectation on your team is in terms of their compensation? Are they compensated, half of the sale, or what? How does that typically work within that context?
We do have a 50-50 split on the leads we provide to them, and a 70-30 split on the leads that are their own sphere. We do have bonus structure set up throughout the year if they hit certain transaction or volume amounts. But yes, 50-50 to start, 70-30 on their own. But again, we don't charge any monthly fees. We don't charge them for any of the programs we provide. If we come up with something new that we really think is going to help boost their business, we don't adjust their fees. We don't adjust their splits or anything. That's it. You're grandfathered in. So
You just include it. You say this is
it's included.
this is part of our package of tools,
Correct.
systems that we give you, and the financial deal stays the same. So no caps either. It's just
Nope,
uncapped.
we don't have any caps on the leads division. We do on the traditional division, but not on the leads division, because someone can have a great first 3 months and we
Yeah,
still got to buy the leads for the next 9. So the leads still will cost us money for those remaining months.
sure. And do you get so for these, if you're sending approximately 20 to 30 leads a month, what are you spending? I mean, I don't know if you have those numbers, but what do you think, what do those leads cost? Are those $50 leads, $100 leads?
They're almost $40 a piece right now.
$40 a piece, right? Yeah, that tracks with the numbers that we've been getting from other, and I know it's very regional.
It
based
is,
on the market.
because we're not a high volume area where I'm at. So we are a very rural area. So I would love to have the $1 million beach homes, but our average price point is 200,000 and
Yeah.
around there. So that does obviously play into how much our leads cost.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah.
So one thing I'm curious around that is, so how are you structured? So are you a team lead, or are you a CEO? And then sort of what is the structure like? Do you have an ISA? Do you have a, marketing coordinator? Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're structured?
Our team, we do, so Robert Slack is our CEO. We also have a gentleman by the name of Dan Walters, who is our COO. We have VP of sales. We also have a marketing director. We do have ISA teams, and we do have a director who's in front of those. We have 2 separate ISA teams. And again, they help the agents. If they can't follow up, they follow up for them. They send them push listings through Ylopo. We don't charge the agents for this, but it is something on the back end that we do to help their productivity. But yes, we have marketing, we have assistants, we have a call center that when the lead comes in, their sole job is to set an appointment on behalf of the agent. So we do have a lot of working parts that have kind of made us as successful as we are.
Yes, there's a lot of company support. So what is the job of the agent on your team? What are they responsible for? And what do you have them do? Like, what's the main thing they do?
Convert. No, but really, that's what I want them to do. So they get the leads. Their job is to follow up with the leads. If they could not be connected on the initial call with our call center, their job is to follow up from that point. We want a follow-up task on every client if we could not touch with them. We want an action plan going. We want follow-up to be there. Like we said earlier, we know it's going to be an average of 12 types of contact before they finally pick up. But even after that, predominantly people will buy at the 6 to 9 month mark, and we have to instill in them that that's your sweet spot. Those people who came in 6 to 9 months ago, most brokerages have long forgot about them 6 or 9 months ago after those first 2 phone calls. So that's where we have to go back and look at those. We have a Y priority list set up. So anyone that's going back on Ylopo, these are the people you want to follow up with the most. They came back and looked at this home 17 times. A phone call needs to be made. They came back and looked 6 days in a row. We need to make a phone call. So their job is connect, follow up, sell. And we really do take pride in selling. We don't want, like I said, we don't want a body. So we need someone who's going to be thorough, who's going to have empathy with it. We need someone who's going to make sure that transaction goes smooth as possible.
Do they specialize, or do your agents handle both buyers and sellers, or do you have it separated out in a way?
Since we do get leads, they are buyers leads. So we are predominantly probably 80% buyers. Now you do get probably about 20% of those who do say, I have to sell my home first. So we do not transfer to a listing agent. Our agents can handle both.
So you really, they can do that. They can do all of it. You don't, no specialization.
Correct.
So then who prospects for listings, or do they also prospect on their own for listings, or how does that work?
Because that we do provide their leads for them, that really keeps them as busy as they are. They don't have to do too much farming. They don't have to do too much prospecting. On average, most people on this team close between 2 and 3. I think our highest this year was 14 in 1 month for one agent. So they don't have to do too much work outside of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and do you find you get, I mean, I know we went through a period of time where, if you talked about internet leads, people pretty much, and it's like, well, it's just buyers. But I mean, we all know that some buyers are also sellers.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's been a whole kind of renaissance in offers that cause homeowners to engage. So I'm just curious, what does your lead mix contain people that are still buyer heavy, or are you 50-50, or are there more people calling to say, hey, I'd like to list my home? Like, what do you see on your lead mix?
We are in a seller's market right now, but we are still predominantly buyers, although we have to get kind of creative when we get these buyers, because multiple offer rounds are it's every day right now. So using escalation addendums and just kind of getting creative with the offers. We are in an area where seller picks title and pays for that, getting the buyers to pick title so we don't run into appraisal issues. Like, we really do have to get creative on how we get some of these deals to get accepted.
Yeah, that is a challenge, and many places where we have way more demand than we have supply. It's just, it's very. I mean, we see. I talked to a friend of mine yesterday, and who is on the sales side, and they were like, "Well, I have a 14 multiple offer situation on my hands," and it's like, oh,
absolutely,
what a headache. What a headache. A lot of work. And I think the listing agents even don't want those, because it's just so much communication they now have to do with everybody, and it's corralling them. I mean, it's good for their client usually, but
the offers only can be so different. So you're just like 7 exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. I've got X number of offers that are basically the same. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough to differentiate sometimes. But so talk to me a little bit. You talked about 2 of your sources. That you use, Ylopo and Realtor, are principal lead sources. And I'm just curious, does the company do any kind of brand? Well, I know we've talked to some companies that do a lot of brand advertising, where they buy billboards or they do stuff like that to generate inquiries. Is there any additional advertising or marketing that you do on top of the lead generation programs you participate in?
We are solely lead generation.
Pure lead gen. Wow, that's actually really nice, because you've given us a benchmark that's a pure play. That's like, we're just a lead gen play.
We are just lead gen. We don't do billboards. I know our biggest competitor is billboard based, and we are solely lead gen.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I've seen the exact opposite. I've seen companies that are really no lead gen, all billboard, all traditional media, all that, and it's interesting. The conversion systems really look the same. They really look the same, but you get a different kind of inquiry from a branded billboard than you do from an internet site, because that person's been driving by that billboard 50 times, and they're like, oh, I know that company because I've seen them a bunch. So it's a little different, but that's great that it's pure play. So that gives us a useful stat there. Very good.
So one thing I'm curious about is, so you're a team within the brokerage, correct? And so are there multiple teams like you in the brokerage, and does the brokerage also have separate agents? So how does that kind of work?
So that's why they call us a teamerage, because traditionally the teams buy their own leads. Well, with us, the brokerage provides our own leads. So because of geographical reasons, we have had to kind of branch off into smaller regional areas. So I run what is called the Ocala team, and we do have Broward, Miami, Orlando, Jacksonville, Panhandle. So we do have 15 other team leaders, what we call ourselves team leaders. We also call ourselves success coaches. So we do have 15 others within the company.
Gotcha. And then the brokerage at large is offering the systems and the training for you all as team leaders to be able to manage your teams and be able to build all the infrastructure and accountability for the agents and all of that. Is that correct?
It is correct. And we have a overall kind of platform we follow and an overall structure we follow, but my area is going to be very different than Miami or Jacksonville. So we do kind of have to, it's like give and take, but my job is to know my agents. It's to know what's going to work for them, what's not going to work for them. How can I tweak it? How can I make it better for them? So while we have a generalized training platform, there are things we all do just a tad bit differently.
Gotcha. So you have the autonomy within your team to be able to like run it and operate it within the brokerage system itself.
Correct.
Interesting.
Well, I'm gonna go back to a question earlier because I realized I had a good follow up for you on it, which is because we have we do talk to brokerages routinely. We work with about 50 or 60 brokerages a year, and a few of them have come to us and had some kind of lead generation programs that they offer, but most don't. I'd say most traditional brokerages, they kind of let people do their own stuff, and then they'll, if a team comes in, they buy leads, it's whatever. But occasionally we get companies where they're like, I really want to get into this. And so I think you've given some great insights into kind of systems and coaching and training and accountability. I think one of the biggest challenges that I'll go back to is, where do you find these people to work on your team? Like, what are the places where you go? And are you looking for relatively new licensees, or are you recruiting out of other brokers? How do you find the person that's a really great fit for your team? Are there any patterns or trends or things there that we could learn from?
Well, it's definitely harder to get from agent number 4 to agent number 5 than it is to get from agent number 30 to agent number.
For sure. Yeah. People start coming, people start lining up around the door, right? They're ready. They're like, hey, I see what you're doing. I'd like to come in. Right.
Absolutely.
Totally.
So we see a lot of that, especially out of Ocala, because it is kind of our home base and where we started. So we have to do very little advertising up here. And we typically have people in other divisions within our company that are just waiting for the opportunity to move up. But we do the traditional, advertising on Indeed. And one of the key things to look for, as I mentioned earlier, was personality. We do like experienced agents, but you always sometimes get the person is just going to kill it with their personality. I could teach them a contract. I cannot get them a second meeting with that client if they completely blew up because of that. But we also do have a program that's called Slack Academy, and it is for newly licensed agents, and it's a 4-week course, and it teaches them how to set up your MLS, how to set up searches, how to open a Supra, just the basics, because your real estate course really doesn't. So we do have that will, gives them a little
feeder, gives you a little feeder for people that come through, and you say, that's someone right there.
Absolutely.
Do that.
Yeah, so I'm curious about your retention rate, because I would speculate that if they come in, they buy in, and they're actually high performing, your retention rate would be really high. But talk to us about your retention rate and how that plays out.
So I am very lucky. Our retention rate is very high within this company, within my team especially. I have had 2 people who did move this year. So of course they do go into my turnover rate. But other than that, we know when they're in training, we can tell if they're going to get it or not. And that's one of our key things. Don't even get them on the team if they're not going to get this training. So our retention rate is relatively high, because if someone fails, I do take it personally. If they failed, it's my fault, because I should have helped them along the way, so they would never have got to that point. So I am lucky. Our retention rate is very high, but it's also not just pushing the follow-up, not just pushing what they need to do, but I do know all of my agents, and I know them very well. I know their spouse's name. I know their dog's name. I know where their favorite place to vacation is, but that's my job, knowing them. And especially in a time like this, I need them to see their worth. I need them to see just how kick-ass they are. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that on here, but
of course you can. Of course you can.
But just how awesome they are. And that's my job. I celebrate everything with them. I celebrate every single milestone that they do. I celebrate individual milestones. I celebrate team milestones. But part of that is, I do think, is part of our retention rate, especially for the teams, because I will never let them go feeling undervalued. That is a personal goal of mine. That is something I won't do. So I do think that has a big play in it.
Yeah, which just makes me want to ask the next question that I have in my brain, Jack, and then I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay.
So do you have, I see what's very interesting is that like people are going crazy on the chat too. So like people really love your organization. So what do you think your core value, do you have a stated core values? I mean, you've been so eloquent in terms of stating your value proposition, but what are your core values?
Our core values are family. We started this as a family-based company. As I mentioned, the first thing, Robert is my father. I did not get into this position because he is my father, but I did have to work almost a little bit harder than everyone else to kind of prove my worth to the company. So a family is it. We have meetings every week with all the team leaders. They can't oversee 600 agents, but my job, I can oversee mine. We try not to let our teams get too big. So 50 is about the max we want to see a team, because over that, we just can't, we start failing as a team leader. So, but family is our core value. Family is what we're all about. We want to make everyone feel like they are part of a family. And if we can't do it on a grand scheme of things, we can definitely do it within the team.
I love it.
Love that.
I just think like there's the notion of, you said it a couple of times, like the high producing and high performing teams. You just attract people who are high performers too, right? So, so you have a high performance culture or environment coupled with the family environment, and that seems to be like something that would be really appealing to people that are high performers.
Yep, absolutely. And the knowing that they don't have to pay for their own leads. That's one of the biggest things, knowing that they don't have to, people who move here who might have done millions in another state, let's say Texas, and then come here and they have no sphere or anything,
Right.
not having a database and then coming in and getting leads handed to you every single day. It's, they know the value of that.
Yeah. They appreciate it because they know how hard it is to make that happen consistently and well. So that's really great. Well, I think we're going to have just a few more minutes. So I've got a couple of things I want to squeeze in. What's next for you and in your organization? What does 2021 look like? Do you have any big goals you want to share? Like where are you wanting to get to with what you're doing? And talk to us a little bit about that.
So this company has grown more than we ever thought it would. So we fully anticipate we're going to be at 750, 800, maybe even 1,000 agents next year.
Wow.
I'm very proud of my team. We currently hold top transactions volume and conversion for the company, and I want to see them sustain that. We are in a low volume area, so they have to work twice as hard. So I want to see them sustain volume. I want to see them sustain transactions. I want them to double their conversion. I want to see us at an average of 6%. So those are my main goals, which may not seem huge, but with the way we're growing, I think that would be awesome if they could continue to do.
Yeah, it's always when you talk to a top level competitor who, if they won the World Series last year, they want to win the World Series again next year. And that does not make it any less hard. It's just as hard the next time, maybe even harder, because people are trying to knock you off. You've probably got some other teams that are that have a competitive spirit that are like, we want to take that top spot. So
exactly.
So I get that. That I think keeps everybody charged up and energized and passionate for continuing to become even better at what they do. Well, this has been just terrific. I mean, we've had more comments in our chat than we have had on a lot of our calls. We do get comments normally, but you have clearly have some fans out there, Lauren, and pretty engaged group here. Before we close out, are there any? I'm just curious about, from your personal leadership style or from lessons you've learned, do you have anything that if you were, we've got a lot of other brokers, a lot of other people from our sphere on the call, anything you've learned that you would want to share with them? You've shared a lot, by the way. So I'm not asking you, I'm just saying, if there anything that we haven't talked about or that you'd like to share with them to help them think about if they were thinking about starting a team, or if they're thinking about building teams inside their company, or if they're just thinking about growing their leadership. So any parting words of wisdom for our group?
So specifically for the team leaders, for those who have a team, for those who are wanting to start a team, we know we can preach these systems. We can push the follow-up, but don't forget to know your agents. As our CEO said yesterday, know who sits on the other side of that coffee cup. And one of my favorite quotes by Richard Branson was, train people well enough so they can leave, but treat them well enough so they don't want to. And I think people tend to forget just how important that is.
So great. So great. Lauren, you have just been delightful and provided so much great wisdom here and knowledge from what you guys have accomplished. So I just want to say from T360, thank you very much. Kelly, anything from you before we wrap up?
No, thank you so much, Lauren. It's great to
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Great. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll be back on after Thanksgiving. We'll be doing this again. And just for everybody that I know is waiting on pins and needles for their copy of the trends report that is coming. This isn't the new one. This is a prior year's trends report. The new ones are coming from the printer. They are rolling off the printer right now, and we'll be getting them in our offices just probably in the next 72 hours. We'll be packaging them up next week and shipping them out to you guys the following week. If you haven't pre-ordered, you can still save $30 off of it. It's normally $199. Go to t3trends.com. If you pre-order now, you'll still get the pre-order, pre-publication discount if you pick that up. And we will put it in a very nice box and ship it to you. You'll get it the first week in December, so you can plan your year using the T3 Trends report, Swanepoel Trends report that we published. So thanks everybody for coming. We'll see you on our next Fireside Friday in a couple of weeks. Lauren, again, thanks tremendously. You did an amazing job today.
Thank you.
And this was a great interview. So I hope you have a great Thanksgiving with you and everybody over at Robert Slack. So thanks so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.